Welcome to the Mainly Eminem podcast, brought to you in association with ePro. I'm your host Danny. Today I am joined by my co-hosts Blake and Ross as we dive into the world of one of hip-hop's greatest. This episode we are celebrating the 25th anniversary of Eminem's The Marshall Mathers LP. So what we're going to do to celebrate is we'll go through some of the stats and info on it, and then we're going to go through the album track by track and we'll have a wee talk about that. So the album was of course released 25 years ago. It was May the 23rd 2000 when this album dropped. On the label itself it was released under Interscope and Shady Aftermath. The producers on this album, it's quite good to see there's not a lot on this. There's only 4 or 5. So we've got of course Eminem, Dr. Dre, we've got FBT, which for those that aren't aware, that's the Bass Brothers. We also have Mailman and the 45 King. The features on this album, we have Dido, RBX, Sticky Fingers, Dina Ray, D12, Bizarre, Snoop Dogg and Nate Dogg, and Exhibit. There were 3 official singles from this album that were accompanied by music videos, and they were The Real Slim Shady, The Way I Am, and Stan. Commercial performance wise, a lot of groundbreaking records that were broken for this album. So we'll start with the first part of it, which was that the album sold 1.78 million copies in its first week, which is a hip hop record that still stands to this day. The album got to number 1 in over 14 countries worldwide. That year alone in the USA, the album finished the year with 7.92 million copies sold. So that was the second biggest album of that year. The first one was No Strings Attached by NSYNC, which was 9.94 million copies. So here is some of the records that the Marshall Mathers LP broke. So as I said, it sold 1.76 million copies in its debut week, setting the record for the largest first week sales for a hip hop album in the United States. This has also, to this day, remains unmatched. The album's 1.76 first week sales also made it the fastest selling solo album in US history at the time, and that has, of course, been surpassed by Adele in 2015 with her album 25. It set the record for the highest first week sales by a solo male artist, eclipsing previous benchmarks in any genre in music. The album sold approximately 761,000 copies on the first day of its release, setting a record for the most albums sold in a single day for a hip-hop artist or solo artist. The album, of course, debuted at number 1 on Billboard 200, and that held the top spot for 8 non-consecutive weeks, a notable achievement for a hip-hop album at that time. The album reached number 1, as I said previously, in 14 countries, including the US, UK, Canada, Australia and Germany, setting a record for a hip-hop international chart dominance. With 7.92 million copies sold in 2000, it became the best-selling rap album in a single calendar year. While not exclusively tied to the Marshall Mathers LP, its success did contribute Eminem earning a Guinness World Record for the most consecutive US number 1 albums by a solo artist. So as we've obviously just went through, the impact on this album from when it came out to even now is something that no other artist in this genre has even matched yet. So it's an unbelievable achievement, and we're going to dive into some of the tracks. So to start off, we're going to obviously start with track number 1, and Ross is going to go through the first section for us.
Yeah, so the first track on the album, official track on the album is the public service announcement, which obviously features Jeff Bass or Jeff Bass, however you want to pronounce it, part of the Bass Brothers. Obviously this is a sequel to the previous public service announcement from the Slim Shady LP, although it kind of uses the same format, but this one's a bit more sort of like, I guess, abrasive is probably the right word, and it's a bit more obviously relevant to the stuff that he had faced following on from the Slim Shady LP, so a lot of like the censorship and, he was sort of being mocked in the industry as well as a few jabs back as well, obviously based on the mood of the album, which we'll get into. But it's not available on the clean version of the Marshall Mathers LP, which I didn't actually know if you guys were aware. But the second sort of track that we go on to there is Kill You by Eminem. It's produced by Dr. Dre and Mailman. It's sort of like the opening track, which kind of, again, sets the mood. Obviously, anyone that's listened to this album a fair few times knows the sort of tone and the lyrics on this album is, again, very in your face and very abrasive, and probably one of the more controversial tracks on the album as well. But again, some of the rhyming schemes that he used on this is unbelievable. It's still one of my one of my all-time favorites off the album for sure. So yeah, it's not anyone, like I said, if you guys didn't really know as well, this album, this song in particular, generated a lot of controversy due to, is it Lynn Cheney, who was the second lady of the United States from 2001 to 2009?
Yep, that's right. Yep.
She was like advocating at the time, big time as well, for restrictions on music sales after citing lyrics from Kill You. She was like very publicly vocal and against him, and this song in particular. She kind of went on like a whole campaign, and everywhere she traveled and sort of spoke about censorship, this was the primary example that she put up. But again, censorship was very different to what it is now. Back then, when you didn't have the internet and it wasn't so easy to access sort of content like this, it was shocking to hear some of the stuff he was saying. But now, like if someone sort of released this now, it's not as out there as it was back then. So again, like you said, the amount of albums sold for the Marshall Mathers LP, and the amount that was sold could sounded like this is pretty crazy at the time if you think about it. So yeah, that's obviously Kill You, which is technically track number 2. Track number 3, I'm not going to go into too much on this one because we all know it anyway, and it's Stan featuring Dido. Producers credited for this are actually the 45 King and Eminem. I hadn't really heard of 45 King a lot until I started sort of digging into this a little bit. Not really anything I would have heard too much, but he's done some stuff with Big Daddy Kane. It's not called Set It Off. So yeah, but again, we all know this song quite well. Very compelling storytelling song. Probably one of, if not his biggest song of all time. I need to confirm it, but I'm not. Apparently, he didn't actually get clearance to use the Dido sample. It wasn't until after the song sort of got big that she kind of went, "Oh yeah, well it's working out anyway." So
the paychecks started coming in.
Yeah, exactly that. I mean, she can't be too bothered because I'm pretty sure she named her kid Stan or Stanley. I'm not even joking. I think if you check that up, someone she's related to or someone got named Stanley, which is it was in the news not long ago. But I remember from what she said anyway, she got a letter saying that we heard your track, we love it, we'd love to use it for this track. Stan, can you take a listen? I hope you like it and we can use your song. It was very out of the blue. I wonder what you could have done. And before she'd even sort of cleared it and said yes, it had already been sort of released. So, but either way, it sounds like it's worked out well for her. Again, I don't know how true that story is though. I feel like that would be probably a bit bigger if he had just stole it. But yeah, I'm not going to go into too much about that because we all know that song anyway quite well. Track number 4, again, it is listed as track number 4, is actually the Pool skit. Again, this is the second skit from Eminem's albums that stages a phone call from Paul Rosenberg. Goes on, he's done a few now. We've obviously heard similar skits in more recent albums too. But in the original skit, Paul says he just wanted to listen to it. He just listened to a rough cut of the Slim Shady LP and asked him to tone it down. This one, he just sort of points out that, yeah, this one's ridiculous. You can't release this. Dre gave me a copy of the album, and he sighs and says, fuck it, and he hangs up. Which then immediately goes into Who Knew. Now, for you guys, because I think, Danny, you're a little bit older than I am. So
yes,
I didn't really get into this song until I'd probably say, this is after iPod days. I think this is when I first got iTunes, and I bought the album on iTunes, and I was like, I don't think I've actually heard this song. And there's something about the production, the violin in particular, that comes up in the hook that probably ranks this in the top 3 for me. It's so infectious,
top tier.
and you can't not bob your head. Again, he's addressing a lot of the controversy that he got from the fame of his previous album. Obviously talking about kids swearing these days and them now blaming it on Eminem and all these other rappers that they listen to. And he's like, it's not really my fault. There's a label on the album that says parental advisory. Like, you need to own up to it at the least. But he plays into it and sort of goes on to say, one of my favourite bits from it is, I never knew I'd have a new house for a new car a couple of years ago. I was more poor than you are. I don't got that bad of a mouth, do I? And he goes, he proceeds to say every probably possible swear word you can think of under the sun. Followed up with shoobity wop, skibbity bebop, Christopher Reeves. Which is
Sonny Bono, skis horses and hitting some trees.
So this is now like 24 years this joke's been running now with Christopher Reeves. It's getting a bit out of hand, but again, one of my favourites from the album. Then sort of moving on to the next track is again another skit. It's the famous Steve Berman skit, which is obviously featured Eminem and Steve Berman. For some reason, when you look at it online, that Melman and Dre are credited for producing this skit, which is a bit odd. But I'm guessing it's because the music playing in the background that you can hear is like the instrumental for What's the Difference. So I wonder if it's something to do with that. But obviously we know from like his more like recent releases how this sort of plays out. Steve Berman, someone that's obviously been around Eminem and his camp for a very long time now, so it's cool to see that this has been reoccurring from however long ago. And then the final track that I'm sort of speaking about is, again, probably one of his most famous tracks, particularly for like his cadence and his delivery on this song, but it's The Way I Am, which he's also produced as well. Again, I didn't realise that until probably the more recent years that he was credited as the producer for that track. Because again, the backing track is so hard hitting and raw. The drums go crazy on this as well. But again, this is possibly one of his like more, when I was younger anyway, the more down to earth and sort of realistic songs that he'd done. He wasn't just talking about all the silly crimes that he might commit and all the people he's going to stalk and assault. This was him saying, like, from a real point of frustration, that he is very much fed up of everyone sort of having an expectancy from him when he's out in public. He's just trying to be with his daughter. He's going on about obviously how he's constantly trying to get sued, which obviously has happened a few times throughout his career now. But again, this track in particular sticks out so much for me because of the music video as well. Back in the days, the music channel here in the UK, if anybody remembers, where I get to sit in front of the TV for about 40 different songs, about 80 different ad breaks as well, just to maybe find a music video for a song you liked. But this one always stuck out to me. And again, he actually pays homage to this music video in The Monster with Rihanna from Marshall Mathers LP2, which is quite cool. So, but yeah, those are the intro to the album. Again, I'd say pretty strong set of songs that actually do fall into that bracket there. A lot of them are skits, but yeah, straight out the gate, it's a very, very hard-hitting album from the get-go, and will definitely have you sitting upright in your seat.
One of the things that I like about The Way I Am is the sort of cadence in it, because it basically rides the beat for the full length of the track. So even at the start of it, it goes, I sit back with a pack of zigzags in this bag of this weed. It gives me, it keeps on, just the way it's done from start to finish is pretty impressive.
And then again, following that same cadence when he says, with the bullshit they pull because they full of shit too, and then he's completely switches it up and goes, when a dude's getting bullied and shoots up his school. Again, everyone started blaming Marilyn Manson at the time. Eminem's previously been seen with him in the past as well. I think they both sort of showed support to one another. But again, I do think this was like a tone that was needed at the time. The Slim Shady LP was fun. I would say probably quite a few people at the time felt like he got away with not addressing it for longer than he maybe should have. But this was a different time period, man. Like you didn't have instant reactions to things online anymore at the time. Sorry, if they'd have to go through like a whole press meeting about what they do address, what they don't address. It's not as easy as taking songs off of Spotify anymore. You know, once those albums are out there, they're out there. So yeah, very, very strong song. Probably one of the strongest of his early career, for sure. There
was a good bit of archive footage on YouTube. So for those that maybe never heard of the Howard Stern Show, but he's basically he's a radio DJ, and he hosts some of the biggest artists around the world. Eminem, just after the Slim Shady LP came out, was on that show, and Howard Stern was basically giving it stinking to him, saying, why'd you talk in that accent? Why you try to talk like, you're black? And I'm almost certain that after that interview, he went back to his studio and he made the sort of early foundations of this track, just with the fact that obviously these cocky Caucasians who I just do not have the patience for. That is basically aimed at Howard Stern. So if anyone ever has a spare few minutes after the show, then type in Howard Stern Show Eminem from 1999 and you'll see how basically the early beginnings of The Way I Am. Right, so we're going to go to track number 8 on the album, which is of course The Real Slim Shady. There's not a lot that we don't already know about this track. It was the lead single from the album. There was a music video. He won a couple of Grammys for it. There was a lot of, alter egos in the song. He dressed up as Britney Spears. He dressed up as Superman. There's so much to it. We all know it. We all love it. The track was an instant hit across the world before the Marshall Mathers LP came out. It got to number 1 in 5 countries, and it got to number 4 in the Billboard Hot 100. So that was, basically straight out the gate after the Slim Shady LP dropped. That was the lead single, and the rest was history from then on. The track was produced by Dr. Dre and Mailman. Track number 9 on the album is Remember Me, that is produced by Dr. Dre and Mailman also. You're probably going to come with a similar theme with the producers on this album, because the next 4 or 5 are also produced by the same duo. Now, Remember Me is, it's one of my favourite tracks off the album. It's very energetic, it's bumpy. The 2 features on the album are from RBX and Sticky Fingers. For those that aren't fully aware of those 2 hip-hop icons, I can tell you a little bit about them. RBX is an American rapper, of course, from Long Beach, California, better known for majority of West Coast collaborations, particularly in the early 1990s. So he did appear on the Dr. Dre's Chronic album in 1992, and again the year after on Snoop Dogg's Doggy Style album. So he has a massive affiliation with Dr. Dre and the West Coast hip-hop scene, so he was, of course, featured on that track. Sticky Fingers is from the other end of the country. He's from Brooklyn, New York, and is a member of the rap group Onyx. He was first discovered by Jam Master Jay of Run DMC in the sort of late 80s. So yeah, he's had a lot of features with the likes of Nas. I think he produced or was collaborating a couple with Nas as well back in the day. A lot of New York hip hop. Also an actor as well. He was in a couple of films, Next Friday, and he was in Blade, the TV series. So he's quite a busy guy himself. So that were the 2 that were featured in that track. Number 10 is, of course, I'm Back, produced by Dr. Dre and Mailman. This track's more of it's like a return, sort of like off the back of Slim Shady LP. It's just a sort of, playful sort of song with, I'm back. There's a lot of the rhythm wise in it, pretty good. The metaphors, there's a lot of rhyming in the scheme as well, and it's probably up there. I would say, you might disagree, but maybe top 10 or 15 Eminem tracks of all time.
Yeah, I'd say that as well. And again, this is like probably the more playful tone from Eminem. So following on from obviously the intro to the album where he's put on a bit of a serious tone straight away, he's obviously come out angry. This definitely felt sort of refreshing. It's also, funnily enough, to bring it to more recent times, the first sort of, I'd say, on-track shot that he's had at Puff Daddy or Puffy at the time, if I'm not right and if I'm wrong in saying sorry, which is probably one of his most vulgar bars of all time, if I might have to say so myself. It is horrible, but it's very funny, and it obviously shows again that they've always found him a bit of a clown. So yeah, I just thought that was worth a mention.
Next track from that, guys, is Marshall Mathers. That is produced by Eminem and the Bass Brothers. This is just, I love the guitar riff in this from sort of start of it. He's just saying, he's had family try to sue him before. He's slating the new kids on the block. He's in that sort of mindset of that he knows that he's popular, but he doesn't want to be tarnished with the pop music brush, because around this time we've got NSYNC, Britney Spears, Christina Aguilera. He doesn't want to be put in that sort of subgenre, so it is more of a sort of couple of insults towards them as well. And he was, he's basically saying he's just a regular guy, doesn't know what all the fuss about me, no one ever gave a fuck before. So he was just basically saying to people, I'm just who I am. It's sort of like in the sort of way of like the track The Way I Am. He's just expressed himself that he's just a regular guy. He's done well so far, but he does not want to be put in that sort of pop culture barrier. Do you think, guys, that he would have been pissed off at this sort of era because he was top of the popular charts and he was winning, pop awards, etc.?
I can definitely see that, especially because, how he talks about in the song, like when the money and the fame came in, that's when people started to care. And it's like, he's got all these controversies, but then obviously you've got everything else that's happening in music, which he's looking at it from the standpoint of that can't be music. Not that it can't be music, but it's goofy, it's silly, it's almost like a bit of a mockery. And obviously when he's being talked about in the same genre, whether it's TV, radio, magazines, I can definitely understand why that would annoy him, especially because one, it's 2 different crafts, but again, even from the personal side of it, like it says in the chorus, he's like, he's a regular guy, no one gave a fuck before, and then he talks about in the song. It's like, like that, like they've seen him on TV, and now they're all fighting on who wants to invite him over, to have some tea and that. So it's like, yeah, it definitely boiled my piss, 100%.
Because there was also the lawsuit that his mum was suing him as well, so that he's obviously had a lot on during the writing of this track. So yeah, the next track on that is number 12, and it is it's a skit called Ken Kniff, who is a fictional gay character, and apparently one of the sort of alter ego members of the Insane Clown Posse, as Eminem liked to say. So there's not much to sort of dwell on this track. It's not even a track, it's just basically 30 seconds long. Does talk about ICP quite a lot. There was some issues. I think from memory, ICP were, they were from Detroit, but they were just outside, and they had sort of issues with them back in the early days, and sort of things led to another. So it is more about Ken Kniff's interaction with the ICP. So track number 13 is Drug Ballad featuring Dina Ray, and this is produced by Eminem and the Bass Brothers. So this is a very energetic sort of club song. I know that Eminem doesn't get played in the clubs, etc., but it's quite, it's got that sort of club vibes to it. Obviously a lot of drug use being mentioned in the track. Very, very catchy chorus. Just all round performance wise, very, very detailed. Guys, what do you think of this track? Is it up there with one of your favourites off the album?
This one was weird for me because this was one of those tracks that I heard and thought, there's no way this is an Eminem song. But it does remind me of, is it Come On Everybody from the Slim Shady? That's the vibe I got straight away. It sounded like he was trying to make a similar song. But yeah, I do really enjoy it. Like you said, considering Eminem doesn't get played in the clubs, it has that sort of ring to it.
So yeah, Dina Ray was on that, and she was known back in the day for being called Track 13 Girl. So she was also on Slim Shady LP track number 13, which was, of course, Come On Everybody. And then a couple of years later, she was on Superman, which was also track 13. So that's one of my favourite tracks off the album as well. Now Blake is going to do our third and final section of the album.
Yeah, so continuing straight on from where Danny's just left off, we're going to Amityville, and it's a very I won't put this up there as one of my favourite songs off the album, but it's quite good. You could argue a storytelling track. Obviously, he's going on about the place where the Amityville horror incident happened, and he's basically saying that where he's from, like, the sick events of war and stuff like that. I didn't realise until I dove into the song. Apparently, Outsiders members, Youngzy, and is it Pac One or Pace One or
Pace One? Yep.
Yeah, apparently they were supposed to be on the track, so it was meant to be Eminem, Bizarre, and then both those members. But apparently, it was Dre who basically axed the idea, even though they'd already laid the vocals down and it was ready to go. Apparently, Dre went, "You've got too many people on the album as it is." Which led Eminem to basically finish the track with his own verse. And apparently that whole event is what actually started the rift between Outsiders and Eminem.
That's right, yeah.
So, like I say, it's mad that just that one thing, which really it wasn't even M's fault, you could argue.
Yeah, it's record labels, isn't it?
That's what I mean, but that's what started that whole beef. So, yeah, it's a bit of a mad one. But, like I say, not much really to talk about that one. Moving on, going to Bitch Please 2. Probably one of top 5 most recognisable tracks off this album. Obviously, you've got Dre on there, Snoop, Exhibit, Nate, and obviously, the late great Nate Dogg. I mean, this track's just unreal, isn't it? Absolutely unreal.
Fantastic.
I do have a little bit of a confession though. I was extremely embarrassed when I was researching this song because I was reading the writers of the track, and I'm reading the names, and I'm like, who the fuck are all these people? I didn't realise that was the names of the artists.
Calvin,
So
Calvin Slip.
I'm there like, Calvin Brodus, who's that? Alvin Joyner, who's that? You know what I mean? And I'm like, oh no, it's the people off the actual track.
You must have knew Nathaniel
Yeah,
would be Nate.
Yeah, no, do you know what? That was the point it actually clocked. To be fair, it didn't do too bad considering it's such a late track in the album. It hit the top 100 in the US billboards, and I believe it hit the top 50 in a different US billboard. I think that was just R&B and hip hop billboard, that one. So it didn't do too bad. All fairness, obviously, I do wish it had a little bit more recognition than what it does. But all in all, it's a great track. Obviously, Dr. Dre and Melman that produced it. So,
Also, the sequel as well to Bitch Please, the original by Snoop Dogg, which was in 1999, just the year before.
Yeah, because that also had Nate Dogg on as well, didn't it?
Yes, it did. Yeah, that's right. I think, and I'm sure Exhibit was on it as well. So that was from No Limit, Top Dog, the album.
Yeah, that'd be it. Yeah, but like I say, in my opinion, one of the most underrated tracks. But I think that is because it is so late on in the album. You know, sometimes when people talk about the album, it does sort of skim under the radar a little bit. But anyway, moving on. Probably one of the most controversial tracks off the whole album. Kim.
Oh, yes.
Fucking hell, is this a bit of a mad one, isn't it? I mean,
I was terrified of this track when I was 10.
Really
Terrified of it.
I mean, fair play to the Bass Brothers for producing it. Do you know what I mean? Like that. I mean, that's got to take a little bit of will on his own to just even produce this track. It's to basically cut it short. It's basically 6 minutes of pure anger, isn't it?
Yeah, you could argue it sounds like someone having a mental breakdown on a track. And you know what? I doubt he did it in 6 minutes as well. I reckon this was just probably about an hour and a half or 3 hours of him screaming.
I bet just the best bits.
Yeah, I bet his throat was absolutely knackered the next day.
Yeah, you'd love to see the behind the scenes of recording this, wouldn't you? Absolutely would.
Supposedly Kim loved it though, didn't she? Supposedly, like, this sort of stuff was, they used to, which song is it of his more recent albums he talks about? They used to fall out and everyone would be like focusing on their relationship, and then they'd run back to the booth and he'd make another song about her and they'd laugh and joke about it. I can't remember what song that is.
Was that Bad Husband?
I think it might be. Yeah, I think it might be.
It could be.
Yeah, like, I mean, it was recorded back in 1998. So
okay.
I mean, I'm very surprised this wasn't on the Slim Shady LP, but I mean, the Marshall Mathers LP was obviously, like he's always said, you had the Slim Shady LP, which was his alter ego, which basically got him off the ground. And then this album was more a look at the man.
Yeah, personal sort of.
Yeah, like this is the man and this and the other. But I mean, it's just mad, isn't it? There's nothing else.
Hilarious.
I'm not even going to try and break it down. It's just fucking mad, isn't it?
There's so much hate in it. So much hate.
Yeah.
It's a great breakup song. Great breakup song.
Oh yeah, 100%. But anyway, we're gonna swiftly move on, and probably one of the. I mean, I can't believe it's gone from such a hatred track to such a goofy track straight after. So obviously you've got Under the Influence, obviously featuring D12, and do you know what? I just love the chorus. Like I think all their verses on it, you know, and all the little lines and the whole album, the whole song is fantastic. But literally, like you could put this chorus to any controversy with Eminem, and it'll just fit. You know, if you don't like his shit,
catchy chorus.
Yeah, that's it. If you don't like his shit, then you can suck his dick. And I mean, 5 minutes of absolute gold. I would say this track is.
Bizarre's verse on this one, Blake, and again, I think we've spoken before in the past where I've said I've always found Bizarre could be a little bit difficult for me to enjoy, but we've spoken before and said one of Bizarre's funniest sort of like moments on track is doing the whole my DJ's in a coma for letting the record skip. It's brilliant. Skip. Yeah, again, and he has an obsession with his bloody pitbull, doesn't he? Like he keeps mentioning this pitbull that keeps getting pregnant, and he needs to sort it out.
Like I say, this one again produced by, if you couldn't guess it, the Bass Brothers. Fuck knows. Anyway, produced by them lot. And yeah, another solid track. It, you know, obviously, I'd say this end of an album is very solid in terms of quality. Obviously, you go straight into Criminal, which
tune.
Yeah, I mean, if it came out today, fuck me.
He would be kneecapped.
Do you know what the mad bit is though? Like, because it's Eminem, like, no one cares. It's like my stepdaughter, yeah. We were in the car and we were just chilling, driving, and she's recently just started getting into Eminem. You know, like just that little bit more. And obviously, she knows I like it. So we're there, we're cruising, and she bangs on this random Eminem playlist, and she does what I do. She's like, "Nah, bored, can't be asked. Maybe, nah," and she'll just keep getting to the track she wants to listen to. This came on, mate, and bearing in mind she's lesbian, yeah, she sat through the whole song and listened to it. She sat there singing along to, especially the start of the song,
Like a
right?
scary car journey.
No, so no, but
Bank
like,
robbery.
no, like, so usually when songs like that come on, obviously, like, I don't want to upset her, so I usually just skip it. But shit, you know, she sat there and she rapped word for word and she listened to the whole song. I could not believe it. A little bit of me was proud, but then a little bit of me was, what is happening? Honestly, I couldn't believe it.
This song in particular for me, like it's so close to the edge. Like it's he's walking such a fine line, and again, it makes you laugh and chuckle at things that really aren't that funny. Like again, at the end of the third verse, where he says, "You motherfucking chickens ain't brave enough to say half the stuff I say, so just tape it shut." And he says, "What is it? I say half the shit I say, I make it up to make you mad. So kiss my white naked ass. If it's not a rapper that I make it as, I'm gonna be a fucking rapist in a Jason
In a
mask."
Jason mask.
That is, like, I shouldn't be finding that funny, but I think it's the delivery in the song that makes it quite comical. Is the fact he's so angry and so punctual with it. It just always made me chuckle.
To be fair, it's also the little dig at Versace as well. Hey, it's me, Versace. What's
That's
up?
true. That's a good one.
But I mean, all in all, I mean, as much as it is on the line and like it's very much finger on the pulse, it is very comedic. I think it literally was just produced as like for shock factor. Now, this is where I am going to move on to another track, but technically, I have finished my bit of the portion. So obviously, if anyone didn't know, originally there was 19 tracks, so it didn't end on Criminal. As much as it was a very shock factor and everyone's like, oh my god, is that the end of the album? Technically yes and technically no.
Mm-hmm.
And
I think certain versions around the world had
so
the track.
So to my knowledge, the US, the UK, I'm not sure about Canada, I think Australia, and I can't remember where else. But they originally had 19 tracks, and it was called The Kids, the 19th track. And it was basically just one big South Park parody, wasn't it?
Oh yeah, just a South Park episode, basically.
Yeah, he was. The idea was he was because people were saying that he got away with certain impersonations that they're going to sue him or he's going to get in trouble if he carries on. So yeah, he kind of went full wham with it. But what you were saying, Blake, this song actually replaces Kim on the clean version of the Marshall Mathers LP.
Oh, does it?
And then it also appears on the deluxe version of the album in the UK and Australian version. So there you go.
Well, I didn't know it appeared on the clean version, but yeah. Do you know what? I don't know why it was actually removed then from actual CD presses, because I'm fortunate enough where I have got an original release on CD.
Oh, nice.
And it has got obviously the 19th track on, and I believe you do as well, don't you, Danny?
Yep, got the so basically 2000 was when I got the album, and yeah, it does have track number 19, The Kids, on it as well. So that there will be a few first editions that do have this.
Yeah, I mean the only reason I can imagine it was removed was either maybe he maybe thought it didn't suit the album, or maybe there was actually a lawsuit. Not so much from the creators of South Park, but whoever obviously put the show out and obviously owns the rights to it.
Yeah.
So whether there was a lawsuit from that side of things, I couldn't tell you, but it's a shame really, because I think it is such a comedic track. I mean, someone who at that time was well known for taking a lot of drugs, and he's there in the song basically saying, "Don't do drugs because drugs are bad." Okay.
He was basically Mr. Garrison. He was playing Mr. Garrison from South Park, wasn't he? So
He was playing a few. It was Mr. Mackey. That's the one, Mr. Mackey, because he was
Mr.
the
Mackey.
guy.
That's it. Okay. Yes, that is it. Okay. So yeah, that was it. So there was 18 tracks on the standard, and 19 on the sort of tracks that came out, or sort of the additional album release that came out. So some people might lucky enough to have the first edition or the second edition, but either way, it is a great way for the album to finish. So, guys, I just want a couple of want your story behind this album from yourselves. I'll go first of all. Basically, I was introduced to Eminem's music in November of 2000. I got the Stand single on CD from HMV, and then it was probably the Christmas of 2000 that I got the album, and as we all know, from then I was a fan. I'm obviously a good bit older than the both of you, so Ross, what age were you when this album was released, and what age were you when you sort of discovered the album?
God, when this album released, so what? I'm 98, so I'd have been like just over 2 when this album came out. Yeah, but this was one of the albums where, so I've said it before, but basically, if you're a like late 90s 2000s kid in the UK, your dad or your mum probably had a CD wallet in the car that was like a little zip bag, and you opened it and there was about 40 different sleeves for CDs, and my dad would let me like pick the CD we listened to, because I used to go and see him every Saturday. It wasn't until I got a little bit older, when the iPod Shuffle came out, that I got the iPod Shuffle, and my dad put all of his music on there. But again, this album, I didn't actually physically own a copy of this album until I'm probably going to say the end of primary school, which you're about 10 or 11 here in the UK. I'd obviously been a fan of his other music. Like, I listened to Encore a few times by that point, but just never really got my hands on this CD until, like I said, probably, when I was in the last year of primary school. And I remember my older brother, he's a few years old. He's like 7 years older. So he would have been about 18, maybe 19. He was looking after us, and he said, like, you're more than welcome to put music on, but you can't have it too loud. And it just can't be too like rowdy. And I was going through his CDs, and he had this, and he also had the Re-Up. I think it was the Re-Up, which I'd never heard at the time. So I was over the moon. I was ready to put this on. But this was one of the only albums where he had to actually sit there and go, no, I probably can't let him listen to this. Criminal was one. I didn't hear Criminal until I probably got streaming services like properly. But yeah, I listened to a few of the tracks off this back then, and I just fell in love with it. Again, it was a lot more aggressive, a lot darker, and again, this sits probably in daily rotation for me. Not its entirety, but there's a few songs on here that definitely get played daily on at the least.
Blake, same question to yourself.
Well, I wasn't even born. This came out one whole year before I was born, so I was born May 16th.
-1.
I was born May 16th, 2001. This came out May 23rd, 2000.
Yes,
I wasn't even a swimmer, right?
You're just in space somewhere.
Oh yeah, mate. I was chilling in some past life. God knows. Anyway, yeah. So I wasn't even born when this came out, which is really sad to say, but obviously, fortunately, I'm lucky enough where I have experienced the album. Now, how I actually got introduced to this, obviously, like I spoke about before, my dad and my brother was the ones who got me into Eminem.
Yeah.
Now, first Eminem song I ever listened to, and I recall listening to, was "Go to Sleep."
Oh, nice.
Wow.
Yeah,
It's a great song to be introduced.
This is it. It was a good one to start off with. Little Blake on his trampoline singing "Go to Sleep," bitch.
Die, motherfucker, die.
This is it. Do you know what I mean? I had no right singing that, but my dad thought it was funny. He was like, "Oh, lucky little Blake. You know, he doesn't know what he's on about. Bless him." And then my brother just went, "Hey, you think that track's good? Come listen to this." And then bang, that's I listened to obviously your most regular ones, like your Real Slim Shady, Stan, I'm Back, Bitch Please Too. And then obviously he was like, "Oh, listen to this." Then you got Under the Influence, then you've got Criminal, then you've got Marshall Mathers. So I didn't really understand it, obviously, until I started going into late stage of primary school, early stage of high school, and I actually started appreciating the music a little bit more and sitting there and listening to it, trying to pick it apart, but obviously just learning it.
Mhm.
But yeah, that was the first time I was introduced to it. So I think out of both, I think I've got the coolest introduction to it.
Yeah, I'm not gonna lie, that is pretty good. In terms of the impact of this album, Ross, influence-wise, where do you regard this in, not only Eminem's discography or even hip hop, just in music in general?
This is like, again, I'm biased because obviously we do a show that's predominantly based around Eminem's music, but the majority of the artists that I listen to and enjoy have gone on to say this album is probably up there for them as well. And I think this is probably looking his more early. When I say early, I'm going to go from like the Slim Shady LP all the way to, let's just say, Encore. This is for me probably one of his more like I guess grounded albums, in the sense that I think none of the beats sounded too outrageous. They all had their own uniqueness to them. And again, like his cadence and delivery in this album is like near enough untouched now when he's in his current music. I know everyone's very impressed because he's very technical now, but to have the delivery and the cadence that he had back then was so unheard of. And so many, like I said, so many of the artists that I enjoy have gone on to say that The Way I Am in particular and the song Criminal have definitely heavily influenced their music moving forward as well. So I'd say this is probably top 10 for me easily.
Blake, which song from the album resonates with you most?
That's actually quite a difficult one.
If he says Kim, we need to run.
No, no. I don't know, because I mean, if I had fucking loads of money, I'd probably say Marshall Mathers, but I don't have loads of money.
It's like Euro Millions. Euro Millions went away from that coming to us, isn't it? That sort of stuff.
This is what I mean. I'm not a criminal. I don't do drugs. I don't know. Maybe not so much what he says in the song, but maybe The Way I Am, just because I feel like in life, obviously, everyone goes through situations, and you're like, you know what? Just I am who I am, and that's me.
Yeah,
I'm not going to
exactly.
change for no one. This is who I become in life. Sort of accept it. I'm not going to change for anyone. I'm not going to censor myself, this and the other. So maybe that.
Yeah, I agree with that.
Yeah, I mean that's probably the only one I can think of.
In terms of the significance culturally, Ross, obviously 2000 there was a good bit of controversy around the sort of themes of the album, but some of the stuff that he did talk about, do you think that it holds up in today's sort of music or social landscape?
Yeah, because, and I don't want to get too controversial with it here, but if you look at his argument on this album for, let's say, school shootings, as tragic as they really are over in like the States, and it is horrible. Mm-hmm. We here in the UK had one in like, I can't remember when it was, the 70s, 80s, or whatever it was. That was the last one we had because we sorted out the gun control. And instead of, sitting there and saying, we didn't sit there and blame anybody in any of the rock music. I think people forget here in England as well that, 70s and 80s was like punk rock era. If you didn't go out on the weekend and get into a fight, you weren't really British at the time. So we were a very angry nation, but we weren't blaming, media and other people and other celebrities for that. There's just a tragic incident that we put a stop to. But again, the lyrics that he uses on here saying he can't take responsibility because you are letting your kids listen to this music, it is again on consumerism. And we're in 2025 now. Let's be honest, the shootings haven't stopped, and they're harder to stop now because of the fact that you have things like the internet. But again, giving it a platform at the time to 1.7 million people in the first week alone, to say the onus isn't just on me. He's a parent as well. He has to shelter his kids from stuff. He's managing to do it, and he's a creator of this content. There's no real excuse for anybody else to do. And I think that's one thing he probably doesn't get credit for a lot as an artist. When he is political, he very rarely makes a bad point, and that sort of started to shine in his early career here, I think.
Blake, on the production and feature side of things, of course, there was a lot of Dr. Dre, Bass Brothers, some standout tracks featuring Snoop Dogg and Dr. Dre, and of course the Dido. Any favourites in terms of those? Even what would maybe be the favourite produced song, and what would be your favourite feature track?
I think in terms of production-wise, obviously you mentioned the guitar riff in Marshall Mathers.
So good.
That is one of my favourite, because obviously I'm quite good. Like I can listen to a song, but I cannot listen to a word that's being said. I can literally listen to the backing track, and that is one, like, you could literally just sit there and listen to that guitar riff over and over. To be fair, I'm going to say, obviously, the best produced tracks are the ones which are just solely by the Bass Brothers, Eminem and the
Yeah.
Bass Brothers, because as much as Dr. Dre did sprinkle his magic, and I know he did help, polish up a couple of tracks on this album, I think Eminem and the Bass Brothers were more interested in delivering the story Eminem wanted to deliver, whether it be comedic, violent, or whether just literally frustration. I think they took a little bit more time in, let's find the best possible way we can deliver this message.
Yeah.
It's hard to really pinpoint one, I'll be honest with you.
Ross, there was quite a lot of controversy on the album when it originally came out. There was, quite a lot of provocative lyrics, violent lyrics. A lot of groups, the LGBTQ community were getting, hurt by it, upset by it. What do you make of the approach? Do you think back then, it was more just an expression or justification against it, or did they cross any lines?
It's really hard because I think as a person, I've always been able to separate, like an artist's art from their personality, provided they are sort of separate people. So I think because when I grew up, in the era I grew up, you had music videos and MTV and all that sort of stuff as well. I didn't just see or hear what I heard from his albums. I did see him on TV as well, and he didn't seem like an arse. I think like an example of that I would say is I would never picture Eminem actually running around and killing his wife or kidnapping Puffy's, missus at the time and doing all that horrible shit to her. In the same instance that I probably, like in this day and age, you guys probably all know, Kanye West at the minute, advocating all that Nazi shit at the moment. I can't now separate that because he is putting it into his music as well as his personal life. Whereas this is different. This is the only controversy that he's really had with the law anyway. It was obviously what happened during the Eminem Show era where he pistol whipped the bouncer, etc. Other than that, he has done pretty well to keep his nose clean in a predominantly black sector where they could talk about, for example, if you look at rappers from New York, a fairly sort of criminal city at the time in the 90s. Drug crime was ridiculous in New York, and I think there was like 3 murders a day or something at one point. It got really bad, but they're able to talk about and reflect what they see. And Eminem is a white kid from the rough suburbs in America, going to multiple public schools. That is probably the stuff he was exposed to. White kids and white, bullies, for example, wouldn't just say one word like bitch or you're a prick. They would probably use horrible words that they used back then, and it was normal. I remember, like you guys probably remember being in school. The names I used to call my friends on a daily basis were like horrible, but that was the time. That was the norm at the time. Whether or not he crossed the line, I would say, if you're looking at it from today's perspective, yes, he probably has crossed the line, but he's obviously made up for that as well, and not necessarily made up for it, but he's obviously said before he apologises for any lyrics that have offended. It's just expressionism. Yeah, I don't know. It's a very tough one to say. I would say there are a couple of lyrics on here specifically towards probably the gay and trans and LGBTQ community that haven't aged well.
I think the fact that Elton John is obviously later on that year he appeared, singing Stan at the Grammys as well. So if Elton John's got your back, then that it's just from that perspective, it is just all about the sort of art of it, and there's nothing sort of deep into it.
It's tricky, isn't it? Because this is art that they create. It's not necessarily like actors, for example, where they're given a script and costume and sets and all that stuff to help bring their role to life. This is coming from his hand with a pen and a piece of paper and what he can conjure up in his mind. The one thing I will say, if you do find it controversial, there are some lyrics on here that, for example, Stan, a very real issue, stalking, and probably loads of celebrities face this. It is probably quite bad that yes, a white male made a song about stalking and it went massive. However, how many people on the planet know that song and know the dangers of stalkers and extreme, fantasizing about being a fan now? We're getting to those dangerous stages now, and you can look back at songs like Stan and go, no, you can see why it had to be addressed. It was getting bad.
Yeah. Exactly.
I always refer back to John Lennon. Like whenever someone goes on, or it can't be that serious. I'd be like,
Facts.
look at what happened to John Lennon.
Yeah,
Like, he
exactly.
was stalked for weeks, and then he met John Lennon, got what he needed, wasn't satisfied, and then took actions into his own hands.
Yeah, the creepy thing from that was 2 days before that happened, the guy was sitting in the front row while John Lennon was doing a gig on a TV show. I mean, that's freaky to start with.
Yeah, and again, I think that was very tastefully done, in the same sense that he could have made the last verse where he found it funny and joked about it, and it sheds light on the fact that you don't really know what goes on behind closed doors. But the fact that he did add that serious tone at the end of the song, saying "You got some issues, man. I think you need some counselling." That sort of stuff. Yeah, it could have been worse, and I do think some of the lyrics on here, some of the controversial points that he refers to, again, like the shootings, like stalking and stuff, they were done tastefully. I just think it's the tongue-in-cheek stuff that might have crossed the line a little bit. But, it worked. It's one of the biggest rap albums in history, so...
Well, that's what I was just going to go on to, Blake. The legacy and influence of this album, it is one of the greatest hip-hop albums ever made. In terms of your own sort of opinion, is it your favourite Eminem album, or if not, is it up there with the sort of top couple of ranges?
Yeah, it's top 3. It's not my favourite, but so my top 3 is Recovery, the Eminem Show, then this.
Yeah, strong 3.
I mean, to be fair, I'm a little bit weird. Like, sometime this and the Eminem Show might either of them will get replaced with either the Slim Shady LP or maybe even get replaced by a newer album. But 9 times out of 10, it is those 3 in order.
Depends on the mood, I suppose.
Yeah, like I said, obviously, if you listen to it too often, that's when obviously you listen to another project and that bumps up a little bit. But I think overall, on an average, yeah, this is definitely top 3. Just because I don't know, I feel like those other projects. Well, the Slim Shady LP, Marshmallow's LP, and the Eminem Show, easily the best 3 back-to-back albums
Album runs, yeah.
From any artist. Not, I wouldn't say ever, because obviously that's down to a matter of opinion, but I'd say if you look at success each album's had, you can't deny it's one of the greatest set of album runs. And obviously this album, it's never really failed to meet expectation, no matter, like, we're talking about it being 25, it could be 30, 40, and I still think it'd hold up on its own.
Yeah, it's still fresh. The sort of the music in it, the storytelling, the whole social aspects, it's still current to these times, despite it being 25 years in. Ross, what's your overall opinion on this album?
Yeah, very similar to Blake, really. I have such a strong opinion on Recovery because that again's a nostalgia trip for me. I was in secondary school when that came out, so that was a big sort of like coming of age album for me. But this album, based on what Blake was just saying there, that 3 album run, when you've got to follow up your sort of debut album, which went mental anyway, you've then got to follow it up with something quite like this. It's probably unheard of. I think it's quite funny when you look at the Slim Shady LP compared to the Marshall Mathers LP, because it is almost like the polar opposite of the Slim Shady LP. It's not as tongue-in-cheek. He does sound a little bit more aggressive and a bit more violent and angry, and that's only a short space between the albums. So it did really well, reflecting how the fame really hit him quite hard, him and his small family at the time. I'd say this for me sits in my top 5, because I don't know where I'd place it, because again it's so dependent on my mood. But consistency wise, this is probably in the top 3 of his albums for me. Saying again with the fact that the production was very good on every track, the lyrics, the content, the cadence, the delivery, the everything is everything you would have expected from an early hungry Eminem. So yeah, it's a solid 10 for me regardless.
Yeah, for me, a little bit obviously different from my perspective, because I do remember it coming out at the time, so it's definitely sort of tosses between this album and the Eminem Show for my number 1 of M's discography. But just the fact that I was about when it came out, I think at a time, so I would have been about 9 or 10 years of age, so primary school as well. Everyone all my mates at the time, everyone in the school, everyone was listening to this album. So it was just like a good introduction to this artist. And yeah, it has lasted the test of time as well, just with it being so impactful. And not even like record breaking aside, it broke lots of records, but just seeing the album is what it's for without all the sales. It's such a good album from start to finish. There's not many tracks that it sort of goes off. It's pretty consistent all the way through. So yeah, from my perspective, it's definitely one of my favourite albums from him. Right, guys, just before we go, we were sort of off air just discussing the Stands documentary that has been in production for some time, but we are now aware that it does have an official release date at either the Cannes Film Festival or somewhere else. I think a couple of us actually put a couple of videos towards it. Thankfully, I don't think any of us have been called up. However, there probably will be a few of you that are listening that are maybe featured on this up and coming documentary. So if you are, we would absolutely love to hear from you. If you are able to email themainlyshow@gmail.com, and hopefully within the next couple of months, if long as you haven't signed any crazy NDAs, we would love to have you on to discuss the full documentary and the sort of procedure that you went through to actually appear on it. So that's to come. I believe it's coming out at this film festival in the next couple of months or so, so there might be an official release towards the end of this year, so we'll see how that goes out. Before we go, guys, is there anything else you would like to talk about Marshall Mathers LP era before we go?
No, I think you pretty much covered the majority of it, to be fair, man.
Perfect. So thanks again to everyone that has listened as usual, and thank you to my co-hosts Blake and Ross. As usual, we are on all social medias. Just look for the Mainly Eminem podcast, and we are available on all podcast streaming platforms. So thank you very much, and we will be back in a couple of weeks with our Eminem show anniversary, which will be dropping very soon.